Hello, I'm live. I'm reading The Invisible Way. It's a book by Reshad Feild, A Time to Love, A Time to Die. It was published in 1979. He passed away in 2016. He has been in Turkey, he's back in England and visited Elizabeth, where he met Noor, fell in love with Noor, and they were advised to go and visit Margaret. And they are now on their way to Margaret in chapter 12. Margaret's house lay on the outskirts of the village. Built of stone, it was separated from the road by an old wall covered with creeper. 9 steps led down through a wooden gate to a massive oak-panelled door. On the right-hand side was a marvellous bell pull with a notice pinned to the wall behind it. Please pull gently. This bell is old. We pulled it gently, uncertain of the exact results, but the sound of bells echoed encouragingly inside the house and was closely followed by frantic barking and Margaret's voice shouting to the dogs to be quiet. Come in, she said, opening the door. I'm sorry about the animals. They are a bit rude until they get to know you. Come along now, she called to them. 2 rather fat yellow Labradors obediently came up, sniffing suspiciously. They're a little possessive of the house, she says, but they will be fine in a minute. Margaret took us into the drawing room, which looked out over the garden at the back of the house. Wide flower borders overflowed in colour along the perfectly kept lawn to a row of fruit trees at the end of the garden. Just outside the window was a rockery and a small pond in which we could see huge Japanese carp nosing around the lily pads. Aren't they beautiful? She said. They are my pride and joy. John used to sit there watching the fish for hours. He liked feeding them at sundown. It's sad he cannot get round any more. We had such wonderful times here. My workshop was downstairs then, but now I have moved my instruments to the attic. I find I can concentrate better if I'm a long way away from other people. And I do have so many visitors these days, what with this and that. Actually, we're lucky today, it's a holiday. So my secretary and assistant are away, and if anyone comes, I shall just say they have to come back tomorrow. We'll have some tea now, the kettle is boiling. While Margaret was getting tea, Noor and I looked at the bookshelves. The walls were lined with books, each section neatly labelled, including ones on all the major religions. Next to them, another section dealt with authors and poets' commentaries on various aspects of the religion in question. There were endless books on Theosophy, the nature of energies, the Druids, Stonehenge, and a particularly intriguing shelf of nothing but ancient Celtic fairy tales. Margaret noticed us when she came in with a tea. I'm afraid I cannot resist buying books, she said. It is the ideas in the books that fascinates me. I don't have the time to plough through all the text, so I just delve into what the author is trying to put across and try to sort out the waffle from the essence, if you see what I mean. Books are living creatures, she said. I try to treat them with all the respect I would the creatures in my garden, or the animals, or humans for that matter, although the latter are more difficult, she said, laughing. After tea, she took us up the narrow flight of stairs to the top floor. In the middle of the landing, there was a hinged ladder that could be pushed back into the roof when it wasn't needed. We climbed carefully, following Margaret, who took the rungs 3 steps at a time until she disappeared through a hole in the ceiling. Careful now, she said. It's a bit awkward, but it's all right when you get there. It took a minute to get used to the surroundings. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through a large dormer window at one end of the attic, revealing a room that looked much like a sophisticated electronics laboratory. Instruments lined the shelves, each one a small black box covered in dials. There were various other more complicated-looking machines on a desk in one corner of the room, with several rows of neatly stacked files beside them. Well, Margaret began, standing in the middle of the room. There are some of the radionic instruments we use. It is really impossible to do more than give a very brief outline of the profession. But since you both seem to be interested, I thought it would do no harm to have a first-hand look. All right, said Noor, but where do we begin? I'm not mechanically minded, so I do not know how I'm going to understand anything. It's not so difficult, answered Margaret. I'm rather like you. I do not get on with ordinary science very well, but rely on faculties other than rational deduction to understand things. As I said before, it has all to do with extrasensory perception, because we're not dealing with a three-dimensional physical body, but with the etheric substance. We are not limited by time or distance, in the normal sense of those words, but can treat a patient anywhere in the world, even if we have not met him or her personally. It is different from everyday life, because we are involved with a matrix, or blueprint of physical and emotional bodies. But what do all these instruments do? I asked her. In one sense they don't do anything, she replied. In another, they are entirely dependent on the operator. Let us just say that they are really a rather subtle form of computer. With the aid of the instruments we can measure imperfections in the force field that precipitate illness and disease, and with that information it is possible to discover a pattern or frequency that can treat the imperfections. The theory is that if we can treat the formative world, the physical one will come back into alignment and balance quite easily. Noor was examining one of the instruments carefully. You know, she said finally, I can almost see the emanations coming out of this box. It is amazing, or am I dreaming? No, there are some people who can sense such things, Margaret answered. The emanations you are observing, Noor, are dependent on the rates of vibration coming from the patterns set up on the instruments. It's rather like smoke, which is an emanation from a burning fire, which is vibrating at a very high rate indeed. I'm not sensitive to these things myself, but for some it is too much even to come into the room. Different patterns are continuously being set up and broadcast to all patients all over the world. Each instrument here is treating someone at this very moment. It's too way out for me, I said, laughing. No, it isn't, said Noor with some irritation. I think I can see what Margaret is doing. And so can you, if you stop trying to understand with the mind. It is what I thought it would be. When I was in that mad state, I could see patterns everywhere. If someone was angry, it was one type of pattern. If someone was sick, it would be another. It wasn't just the colours of the aura that I would see, but the subtlety of the patterns within the colours and even before colour. Radionics is something like touching up a negative to get a good photograph, isn't it, Margaret? You could certainly look at it that way. Of course, some people do not need instruments at all to achieve the same results. I know of several famous healers who do the same thing. The only difference is that we can treat many people simultaneously once we have the necessary data at our disposal. But it is like working with a negative. Look, said Noor, tugging at my sleeve. This is really important. It has to do with what we were talking about at breakfast, treating the cause and not the symptoms, which is real healing. If it hadn't been for people who understood these things and who could work with a portion of my mind that was shattered, I could have been locked up and given something terrible like shock treatment. It's wonderful, isn't it? She said to me. Without waiting for an answer, she repeated, it is wonderful because a whole new world opens up for us. All right then, I said, surprised to find myself feeling defensive. But what about John? I asked Margaret, couldn't you do something for him? I thought someone would ask that, she replied. But to answer your question, there is no cure-all. The doctor in the world can guarantee the treatment he or she is giving. In radionics or in any other form of therapy, work can be done only to a certain level. In John's case, it might well have been possible to do something, but by the time the cancer was firmly established in his physical body, he just did not seem to respond. She paused for a moment. Anyway, sometimes it is just not right for someone to get better. There are other, higher reasons for this, and we must always remember that appearances are not everything. Perhaps that is something to understand in the tragedy of John's illness. Come on now, she said, putting her arms around us. It is time for you to get back. I cannot come round this evening, and I do not know whether Fordy is coming to help with John's supper. I'm sure you can get him something anyway. Give him my love, won't you? So that was the end of chapter 12. And chapter 13 is coming soonest.